little too quick. All right, I've got the trailer loaded up and I've got the family with me. We're on our way from Phoenix up to Payson to pick up a 74 Citroen 2CV. And that's that goofy old Citroen that looks a little bit like a Volkswagen Bug. And they're pretty unusual. I haven't seen one actually for sale in the valley yet, so we're pretty excited. We've only seen a couple pictures. We haven't seen it in person. All right, here she is all loaded up. Now, I don't know a ton about these, but I do know that not all of them had these trunks. Some of them just had like the canvas that continued on, and I believe this is a 74. So I think it's got a little bit newer, some of the newer features, but it's in really good shape. I mean, the doors close and latches work, and it still has some of the panels and stuff. So should be a lot of fun. Let's get it home.
I'm going to go this way.
Okay.
Come on, this way, Papa.
All right, you got it. I'm coming.
We're going the boys' way.
All right, I've got it home safe and sound. Guys, I'm so excited right now. I cannot wait to start working on this car. For me, in this industry, there is practically nothing that's better than when you have an old car, especially one that you like, that hasn't ran in many years, but that stopped running for something simple and that nobody has messed with along the way. It's so frustrating when you have a car and it stopped working for some reason, or they just wanted to freshen it up or tune it up and they take everything apart and put it in boxes and things get messed up and mismatched and nobody knows where anything is. It drives me absolutely nuts. But as far as I know with this vehicle, 4 years ago, the owner got in it, it was running, it was driving, and then he tried to start it up and he hit the turn signal and he said a little bit of smoke came out of the wiring in the turn signal and he just stopped right then and there and hasn't done anything with it. So the only thing that could make this better is if I had an instruction manual that went with it. This is a factory service manual. So there's only like 12 wires on the whole vehicle. So there's no reason why this thing can't be running within an hour or so. Let's just start. Let's get right to it. All right, let me show you what I've done so far. Nothing too complicated. The butterfly valve in there was totally stuck, and so I freed that up with just a little bit of a PP blaster, so that moves freely now. This the linkage here, so that's probably some kind of a clip goes on the end because it's missing, so the throttle cable just pops out. So I'll probably just drill a hole in that and then put a pin through there. And then for the battery, it uses a super tiny battery. So this is the smallest battery that I had lying around, and the terminal is so corroded that I decided I would just use my trusty vice grips and this little short run as a temporary cable. Now, as soon as I hooked it up, the headlights turned on, and I haven't the foggiest idea how to turn them off. I got in here, and this guy, I push it in. There's a horn. I pull it back or forward, and you can see it's my high beams. But this seems to be hazards. This doesn't seem to do anything. I just push this in. Wipers, again, nothing. These are both cables, so it's not here. I think it might have to do with the multifunction switch here. The turn signal switch, it probably goes in for the headlights and then up and down for turn left and right, but I'm not really sure. But I'm gonna see if I can go ahead and get it started even with the headlights on. Let's see. All right, guys, I figured it out. That's the horn, and then you got the high beams there, but I didn't realize this turned. So there we go. I don't know what any of these letters mean, but I found out a way to get the headlights off. All right, let's see if this thing starts. We'll get a little go fast juice in there. So she started up with the Go Fast juice, so that's good. We know that at least the ignition coil and the spark plugs and all that is working, but there's clearly no fuel. So what I'm gonna do is hook up a vacuum pump to the carburetor and then see if I can draw that fuel past the fuel pump and get it into the carburetor, and then we'll get it started from there. So I sent my inspection camera into the fuel tank to see if there's any fuel. I don't know if you guys can tell or not, but that's the sending unit. Boy, is it rusty. Interesting story about this inspection camera. They're pretty cheap now, but I got this when they were expensive for free because they stopped making these batteries for them. And so I just wired up an old cell phone battery that was 3.7 volts instead of the little 4-volt battery there. And this thing has worked for me for 10 years. But yeah, we don't have any fuel, so I guess I'll go get some fuel. So I just tried gravity feeding it by hooking a line up to this and then a little can with fuel in it, and it was just dumping the fuel right in there. So what that tells me is that the float is stuck, at least. I mean, it could be more problems, so I'm gonna have to pull this carb apart. Alrighty, here's the top of the carburetor. A couple problems right off the bat. This right here, that I don't know if you can see, there's a teeny tiny little ball right there, and that ball is supposed to be depressed when the float is all the way up. So as soon as it's full of fuel, that's depressed, and that ball was stuck. So I was able to pop it with just my fingernail, and it was good to go. There's a little tube right here that is clogged up. Other than that, it looks pretty good. So I'll just go through it, clean it up, and then reinstall it. And at least with this little ball valve back in, at least we should be able to run it off of a gravity feed little can. So we'll see if we can get it going there. So here's how it's looking. I put the old gasket back on, a little piece broke off, and so I just added a little gasket maker. I'm gonna try and track down a rebuild kit for this at some point, but I just want to see if it'll start right now. Alright, I let the RTV cure overnight on that one little corner, and then I hooked up this fuel line to this dripper here that I have, and you can see the fuel level is holding, so that's good. So we know that that little ball valve is working, and everything else inside is cleaned out. So I put just a little bit of fuel in there to get it primed up, and then over here, this is the fuel line that goes to the carburetor, and I've got it hooked up to this cup here so that hopefully it'll start pumping from the tank, and then I'll be able to just unplug that and plug that back in, and it should be good to go. But I'm gonna try and fire it up right now. So what we're gonna see if it fires up, and then if this level starts to slowly go down, then it lets us know that at least it's running off of the fuel that's in the carburetor. Let's see. Well, the fuel level's dropping a little bit. It sounded like it was trying to run. The accelerator cable, I don't know if it came unhooked or if it was never hooked up. So I might not have been giving it any fuel. So let me try it again. So the fuel level was dropping out of this. That's good. We know that the carburetor is getting is giving it fuel, but I'm still not getting any fuel here. So it's telling me that the fuel pump is not working, or we still have some issue there. So I'm gonna keep working. So it turns out the fuel pump is working. It's just sucking in air. You see how nothing's coming out? But when I put the nozzle down in there, I'm getting air. So it's pumping. There's just no fuel pickup. So maybe the pickup tube that comes in from the top, maybe that got disconnected somehow. You see, it's trying. It's certainly trying to pump, but it's just sucking air. So we'll figure out why that's doing it, and then we'll go from there. Alright guys, I pulled the fuel tank out, and right as I started to lower it, I realized this rubber hose is totally disconnected and cracked. So that's why it was just sucking in air. I wasn't getting anything from the fuel tank. Also, the sending unit, the clip here is all bent up, so that wasn't working. But while I was down here, I was looking at something interesting. I'm checking out the brake system because there's only a single master cylinder. It's not like the new ones where it's a dual reservoir. There's only one reservoir that operates everything off of one piston. So if you lose brake fluid out of any one wheel cylinder, you lose all your brakes. And so I was looking here, and you see how it's a metal line that runs in through this little swing arm, and then it goes in here to this tube, and then it goes to this proportioning valve in the rear. I was looking at that and I was thinking, well, this wheel has a ton of travel, right? It goes, here's the bump stop, and it goes all the way, so what is that, 9-10 inches? And I don't see any rubber hose. So on this side, I popped the cap off on that tube. Check this out. I don't know how well you can see it. Let me see if I get a little light in there for you. Look at that. It's a metal line that's all wound up. So as you hit bumps, it kind of like uncurls it on a little spring. That seems super dangerous. So I'll probably figure out some setup so I can change it out to like a proper dual reservoir master cylinder. At least it has emergency brakes. I guess that's your backup, along with a manual transmission. That'll help. But boy, that seems not safe. So I'm gonna put a new hose on the fuel tank, put the fuel tank back in, and then we'll hook it all up and see if she runs and drives. So if you remember, I was looking at this with my camera, and you could see how dirty and corroded it was. What I couldn't see was that the little filter on the bottom was gone, and it looked like the metal pickup tube is just fully corroded, and then the sending unit does not move at all. So there's no working fuel gauge. So I started dumping out the fuel that was in here. I don't know if you can see. There's a little filter screen on the bottom. It was disgusting. It was fine on top, but there's like a nasty layer of sludge in here. So let me see if I get some light in there. Maybe a light in here. I'll show you that way. You can't really see in there, but it's pretty bad. So I'm gonna, luckily it's looks like it's just plastic, so I'm gonna pressure wash it, clean that sucker out, and then I don't know what exactly I'm gonna do for a pickup tube. I might just fab something up, but yeah, I'll figure something out. So I cleaned off all the rust. It looks like there's no cracks in the tube. I broke off the fuel sending part because it wasn't doing any good. I took off that little sock on the end, and then I flared it to get a little bit better, to make it suck up the fuel a little bit better. I found one of these on eBay, and I just ordered it up, and it's coming from France, so I don't know how long it's going to be, so I wanted to make this one usable. So it's going to be picking up raw fuel, but I just cleaned out the whole inside of this is pressure washed. So there shouldn't be too much sediment or gunk or anything in there. So what I'm going to rely on is I'll put an inline fuel filter, which this probably should have had anyways, after the pickup tube. So I'll do it closer to the pump, and I'm just going to install this as is for now, just to get it going. All right, I've got my vacuum pump here hooked up to the line, and it is after the fuel pump, so it's going to try and pull the fuel all the way from the tank to the pump. And I wanted to show you, I don't know if you can see here, there's the filter, and watch, I'm going to pump it, and we'll see if we can get that. Look at it go. Slowly. Picked up a new battery and a new battery cable for the negative terminal, so I can swap out this ill-fitting one and vice grip. That way when I actually install it, I can drive the sucker around. So let's put everything back together and then see if it fires up and moves on its own power. Alright, so this is the first time I'm taking it out on the street. I've driven it around on the property a little bit, and it seems like the only issue that I really have is that I think the carburetor diaphragm is probably dried out, because when I give it a little bit of gas, I don't see any fuel squirting in, and it pops and backfires. So I think the butterfly valve's opening, letting in too much air, not enough fuel. So I'm gonna have to keep the choke partially closed to limit the airflow to increase the ratio. So it's kind of like I've got two throttles. It's a little bit touchy. But it's running okay. It'll be interesting to see when it gets a little warm how it does. Now, if you remember when I started it up in there, it was grinding when I was putting it into gear, and that was because the clutch cable wasn't adjusted properly. And so when the clutch pedal was depressed all the way, it was still floating with just a little bit of pressure on that. It was floating with a little bit of pressure on the flywheel, and so it wouldn't quite go into gear. But I've since adjusted it, and it seems like it's going into gear okay now. Let's see what it does. Yeah, there it goes. Park and brake in. I love little tiny cars, man. Woo. Just gotta close that gate. Brakes are not the best. Hey, my mom's here. Hey, Ma! How are you?
I've never heard it sound like that.
I'm taking it for a test drive. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay.
So she actually taught me how to drive a stick shift. And she's one of only 2 people that I know that currently drives a manual transmission. The other's my brother-in-law, who drives a Mazda Speed 3. It's a little faster than this. This is pretty nice, man. The shift's fine into the gears. See how much get up she's got. Oh, not a lot. Boy, this carb needs a rebuild bad. There's just not a lot of acceleration to it. She died on me. I don't know if you guys can see this. What was that? My shoelace got caught in the door. I was having trouble hitting the shifter. There it goes. All right, let's get this thing back up. There we go. Boy, this thing is a little bit difficult to keep going. It'd be nice when I get that carb kit. Whoa, a little too quick. This is kind of a cool car, man. I like these things. All right, well, there you have it. First start and first test drive on a 1974 Citroen 2CV. So what should I do with this thing? I'm going to replace the fuel sending unit, so we've got a fuel gauge, and I'm going to rebuild the carburetor so that it runs a little better and doesn't die on me. But other than that, what should I do? Let me know.